imagine we will take a web server as an example. So I want to host a static web page, okay, with my own content using the container. Okay, let's quickly see that how we can do it. Okay, so for this, we are going to write a Docker file. Okay, there is a limitation comma best practice in the Docker. That is, all the Docker file should be with the proper file name. That is called, it should be start with capital D, okay, and the file name should be Docker file, which is starting with capital D. Okay, so this should be the file name, and this is also in line with the microservice concept. So on a single repo, you can have multiple microservices with unique folder for every microservice. For that service, you will write its own Docker file. Okay, so always the Docker file should be with this file naming convention. You can override it, but I would suggest keep it with the same naming convention so that everyone will be able to understand, okay, this is the Docker file for this particular service. Okay, so the option will be, so for that, let's try to create a directory, and inside the directory, let me create a Docker file, and from there we will do that. So let me do mkdir first Docker. First Docker. So I'm just creating a directory. So just think of that. Okay, first Docker is a service, and from that service, for that service, I'm going to create a Docker file. Dockerfile. So please note, in the Docker file, the file name should be Docker file, which should start with a capital D. So writing the Docker file, which is something similar to what we normally do in the server scenario. Okay, so the first line of a Docker file can be from a base image. So let me talk about, so imagine I want to host a web server. What I will do, I will install a base operating system. On top of that, I will, if it needs any OS update, I will just do that. And then I will install the Apache on it. And after that, I will put my static HTML page in the default HTML directory. And then I will start the Apache service. Then I will be able to access it from the external world. The similar kind of scenario we are going to do it here. So the first line of a Docker file will be from. So all the Docker commands are, okay. So in the VI, if you want to type something, you need to press I, okay. Then you will go into the insert mode, okay. So I'm going to type in from. From is the command where you are going to define what is my base Docker image. Okay, so here let me use Ubuntu 18.04 as my base image. So that's what I'm going to provide. And all the Docker commands are in uppercase only. There is no lowercase for it. Okay, you will see that in the Docker file. So the first thing is from Ubuntu 18.04. And the next thing is I can, okay, before going to the next thing, I can also write comments in Dockerfile, which is very similar to your shell script. If you start any line with hash, it is going to discard the line. Okay, so next, say install Apache. So if I want to run a command on the Docker on the base image, so the command is run, R-U-N. Okay, run. So on Ubuntu, the command to get the latest OS update is apt-get update. And next, I'm going to install Apache. So the command is apt-get -y. So apt-get will ask for a prompt if I want to install a Apache. So that's why I'm giving -y. Install Apache 2. Apache 2 is the package name for Apache in Ubuntu. Okay. Next, I'm going to host a web page. So I need a web server, right? So Apache is my web server. So the next thing I'm going to talk about is called creating the, so I told that, okay, I want a static page, right? So let me create that, create index.html. Okay. So here also let me run a command. So echo, so in Linux, echo will print whatever I give as input, right? So let me just call it as a Docker training. And I want it to write in Linux. If you use the greater than symbol, the output of the command will be written or overwritten on the existing file. So I want it to create an index.html in the location where www.html/index.html. So this is the default page my Apache server will be hosting. So I'm just creating the content of the index.html, saying that the content will be Docker training. It is just to mimic the application deployment. In a real-time application deployment scenario, either you can give a git clone command here, or otherwise you can create a jar file, and the jar file can be copied inside the container. Whatever you want to do, you can just provide it here. Okay. So here we are just creating a simple static web page. I need to start the service, but here things are a bit different from my virtual machine, because I can start a service using systemctl command or a service command. Okay, but the systemctl or service command is going to start the service in the background, right? So I already told Docker needs a running process, and the Docker health is totally dependent on the running process. So in this case, I should start the Apache in the foreground, so I can map the Apache which is running in the foreground as a running process for the container. So if Apache goes down, I can consider my container is going down. So this will be very useful when you're doing the health checks and other stuffs, because let's say I'm keeping MySQL as my running process. If MySQL service is going down because of any issue, my container will go down, so that my orchestrator, that is Kubernetes kind of application, can identify that and it can bring up a new container in that place, right? So that's why Docker always should be mapped to a running process, and that running process should be the core process of the microservice. Okay, so in this case, if I use the service or systemctl command, it is going to start the service in the background. So I need to start the Apache in the foreground. So I will create a script which will start the Apache in the foreground, and that script I will give it as a running process. So that's what I'm going to do now. So first, create a script to start Apache in foreground. Okay. So let me use the echo command to create the script. So to start the Apache in the foreground, the first thing I need to do is I need to load the environment variables of the Apache. So that I'm going to execute it by /etc/etc/apache2/envvs, and I'm going to, using a single arrow, I'm just going to create a file that it will overwrite the file if there is any content. So let me call it as run.sh, and next run echo. The next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to create two directories. One is called as a run directory and a log directory. Okay. Apache process status will be taken from the run directory and the log directory. So when I start the service as using the service command or systemctl command, these things will be done in the background. As I'm doing it in the manual way, I'm just creating the directory. So the command is mkdir -p /var/run/apache2. And write it to the run.sh. So the double arrow mark means appending to the existing file. Okay. Single arrow mark will overwrite the file and double arrow mark will append the file. Run. Okay. So now I'm going to create log Apache2 run.sh, and then next I'm going to create or start the Apache /usr/esbin/apache2-d. Next, so my script to start the Apache in the foreground is ready. It is loading the environment variables, creating the run directory and log directory, and it using this command, it is going to start the Apache in the foreground. So the next thing I'm going to do is I need to give a execute permission for the script, because the script has to be executed as a process, right? So I need to provide execute permission. So provide execute for script chmod 755 So slash directory I have the run.sh, and next is expose Apache port. Okay. So in the Dockerfile, this is where I'm going to define which port needs to be open for the external communication. Okay. This is one of the advantage of Docker. Okay. If you talk about normal VMs, okay, so when you install a machine, if you don't install any firewall, all the 65,000 ports will be open to the external world. But in Docker, unless you either expose the port or do an explicit port mapping, this will not be exposed to the external world. So that is the another advantage of Docker. So the command to expose a port number is expose 80. Okay. Now my Docker file is completed, almost completed. So I have taken the base image, installing Apache, deploying my source code, and creating a script which will start the Apache on the foreground and providing execute permission for the script. And then I'm exposing the port number. And the final step is I need to tell the Docker what is my command script. Okay, so there are two ways you can define that. One is called CMD and another one is called the entry point. So here I'm going to use CMD and the command is run.sh. So this will be my running process for this container. Okay, so let me, okay, to save the file, you need to press escape : WQ, W for write and Q for quit, and then press enter. Now the command to build the Docker file is docker build -t. So -t is nothing but a tag. This is where I'm going to provide the name for the image. Okay, so let me call it as Apache. And next, I need to provide the location where my Docker file is available. Okay, so in Linux or Windows, in both, dot represents the current directory. As my Docker file is available in the current directory, I'm just going to use the dot. So once you run it, I don't have the Ubuntu 18.04 locally because I have removed it. And it is running the apt-get update. And then it is installing my Apache 2. Then it is creating the index.html, run.sh is created, and the permission got changed. And the command is defined.